if you come to Texas State softball, you're going to be a part of a big picture, and it's going to be so worth it. And it's going to be difficult, and it's going to have its challenges. But if this is the experience you want, then this is the place for you. And San Marcos also is just like a beautiful place to be. But I think whenever like a program is so rooted in success, because that's the other thing, is you're going to grow as a person, right? You're going to find family. You're going to find out who you are, but you're going to win a lot of ball games because we're high level coaches. And I think like when you have both of those things of I'm taken care of as a person and I'm also highly competitive and I'm surrounded by authentic people who really care about me and show up for me every day, that makes that hard to leave, even if they're not getting as much playing time or if, things maybe seem greener on the other side.
Welcome to Zen Game, where we go inside the world of college sports. I'm here with Bobcats softball assistant coach Joshua Trevino, and it's such a pleasure having you on today. I'm excited to talk about softball.
I'm excited to be here. I love getting the chance to talk about our program. As an alum to Texas State, and I've been with this program for over 10 years with Coach Woodard, I love Texas State softball and getting to talk and share all the cool stuff about it. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I like talking about school, and talking about softball as a sport always gets me excited, and it was fun. I got to talk to Jess and Sarah yesterday, who made such a massive impact on this program. What was it like
to say the least? Yeah, geez.
I mean, some of the more impactful players in the sport over the past half of a decade, I'd say.
Yeah.
But what was it like coaching Jess so closely over all of those years? Because it has to be special to wake up every morning and have one of the best pitchers in the country on your staff every day.
For sure. Coaching Jess was the first word that comes up is fun, right? Because I think every coach wants a competitor. Every coach wants someone who's going to be a sponge, and every coach wants somebody who's going to go out there and give everything they have. This was my first real big job, right? Because I went straight from being a GA to being an assistant coach here, right? So I kind of was a little nervous to begin with, because I'm like, okay, I'm inheriting a really good pitcher, right? And she's got 2 years left. And my goal was, okay, she's good. I want to make her I want to help her be an All-American. She's got the stuff. I want her to do it. So in the beginning, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I was like, okay, she's a high profile athlete. I was a little nervous. And then once we got into the work, it just became so much fun because she just was open to every conversation I had with her. She's a hard worker, and I think what made it more joyous was she's very humble, and it was kind of I want to be good, and I want to be an All-American, but I don't want to come across as being selfish. And so seeing her do it her way of I'm going to be who I am and also be really good at softball, and I'm not going to lose who I am either, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
I'm going to be a good teammate, I'm going to go win these ball games, and I'm going to do the thing, but I'm going to stay true to myself. And I think at the end of the journey, when I think back, that's where the joy and the fun comes from, is because I got to see a whole person go through this journey and see how much she's grown and how much she's developed, not only as a coach and now a pitcher, but as a person. Seeing somebody succeed and do it their way, that was just so it filled my cup as a coach, because that's what you want, right? At the end of the day, we want our athletes to succeed on and off the field, and to see her go through that full circle of evolution of I achieved everything I wanted and became the person who I wanted as well was just the best thing I could have ever asked for.
And for her and Sarah and that team to go out winning a Sun Belt championship, you really couldn't have written that up any better.
No, and that's exactly how that was supposed to happen. When I think about that senior class and Sarah and Jess, the things that they poured into Texas State softball, the loyalty they had, how deeply they cared for it, I'm we are exactly where we're supposed to be right now, on our home field, playing Louisiana, right? Getting to do the thing in front of the people that we, care about, and the crowd is packed. You talk about full circle moments and nothing being a coincidence. That's exactly how that was supposed to happen, 1000%.
Yeah, and I think that it's nice when everything aligns. So
yeah,
they could have that moment. And then you get to add on for both of them that they then both find themselves in a softball league, getting to play professionally. In Sarah's case, getting a phone call, almost everyone on that team, that Monarchs team, they got a phone call weeks before the season even started, and was hey, you're going to extend your softball career, and getting to go do that at your home stadium, and then both have the level of success that they did in different ways. you really couldn't have written the whole thing up any better.
No, you could not have. And it just, again, I think it speaks to the kind of people that they are for them to, you know, Sarah is probably Sarah and Jess, but speaking on Sarah a little bit, one of the most humble people I've ever met. She will never walk into your room and be like, "Well, I'm Sarah Vanford and I'm a really good softball player." But I think for her, like, I think she, like, I'm happy she got that opportunity and then became one of the better players in the league. And I think finished with like in the top 5 of like the statistics as a hitter and that kind of thing. So I'm glad she got to do it and got to do it at home. I think she helped. Ricky Woodard has helped establish a lot of respect for Texas State University, but when there's a Texas State Bobcat playing on a team with All-Americans from everywhere and being one of the best, I think that just puts a little extra chip on her shoulder as a university of like, hey, like, okay, I see what you got going on there and I respect it, you know?
She's one of the best hitters in the world.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt. And she got to show that and put that on full display. I think that was what was nice. You know, as they were both talking about yesterday, they don't know if it's the end. You know, it's nice that they had a closure moment, both of them. You know, it's impossible when you're still in your prime, like both of them are.
Yeah.
A phone could pick up, and you only, as anything you're doing in life, you only know if it's over until you get that phone call. Every time you got to make that decision, and someone says, "Hey, you know, I want you to suit up," or the right coach gives you the right conversation.
Yeah, or the right situation for sure.
You just don't know. And but there's no doubt that she got to prove in that league what everybody knew here, that there's not one softball roster in this country that she would not be qualified to play for.
Absolutely. And I think it just speaks more to, you know, realistically, like those kids after their first 2 or even 3 years of being successful here could have jumped ship, you know, could have jumped ship and gone somewhere where maybe they're going to get paid, right? Like in the world that we are with NIL now. And I just like to see kids pour so much, because I just feel like that's going to be the struggle now for the mid-major universities, to have kids who want to pour into the university and make it a better place for other people to stay here, right? And not have to fight a battle of, I could go somewhere else, you know, but what does loyalty matter to me? Making a place better than I left it mean to me. So I think for them to carry that into professional careers where I was like, no, I was really good at one place. And everyone transfers for their own journey and that kind of thing. But I just think like that just adds so much value to their story as well.
Funny enough, I didn't ask them about it, but I think that what's really tough about mid-major baseball and softball is they're both such stats-driven sports. So it's not hard. You know, football, you can look at receptions and passing yards, rushing yards, some defensive stats, but that doesn't really tell the full story in that sport in the same way. In baseball or softball, there's still some intricacies on defense and things, and there's metrics for that too. But like, you can go on to D1 softball with a player like Sarah or Jess, and you can easily go search by ERA, you can search by OPS, and you get a pretty good idea. And I feel like what a lot of schools do is they probably look at the like OPS leaders and look at the ERA leaders and strikeout leaders, et cetera, in the country, and they say,
yeah,
oh, well, these people are at mid-major. Look at who the leaders are. I'm like, oh, these people are at mid-major conferences. Yeah. They'd help my roster. I'm going to go pick up a phone and...
Oh, absolutely. There are so many like things that go on behind the scenes, right? And it's, you know, like, just for like sake of honesty, like there are people, like we did become privy to people trying to steal Jessica Mullins from us, or like trying to or she'd be like, hey, I just want you to know that these people are talking or whatever, and I am not part of that conversation, and that's not something I'm ever going to do, but you're going to hear from me. Like I didn't even entertain that. So absolutely, I think that winning puts a lot of pressure on coaches, obviously, and people got to do what they got to do for their program. So there is a lot of, unfortunately, that kind of thing behind the scenes of, I've got my eyes on you. How do we steal that kid?
I'm sure it's not limited to those two either.
No.
It
Yeah.
definitely happened for both of them because they're pretty high profile, and someone's sitting there, and it just takes one team to sit there and say, hey, at this position, I'd like to upgrade. But I'm sure that was all the way, on a team that was as good as the team was last year, that was all the way down the roster, where I think there's people all the way saying, I just heard about this from different teams, of like, oh, I need a second baseman, I need a center fielder. And those go look down and say, if that center fielder is even marginally better than the one that we have, or even has a chance to compete, there's a booster out there saying, I'm going to offer even a relatively smaller amount of money and see, can I get this person to be pried away?
Absolutely, because then it begs the question to the coach, like, you know, do I take a kid who has playing experience, who's going to be able to transition and play in a game, right? Or do I, you know, play the freshman who is talented, is going to coach, but just hasn't been there, done that yet, right? So it's just, yeah, absolutely, top down. It's like, do I take a kid with experience, or do I try to go after it? Just, yeah, absolutely.
What's been so special here is that really has not been the theme for a lot of schools, and it's not just money. There's a lot of reasons that people, I think that the grass is always greener in some people's eyes when they're not playing, are you could go all the way down the list for the reasons that people transfer. It's not just money related or NIL related. But what's amazing about this school is that that's not really happening at a high level. You know, you're keeping Mattie for another year to go become a top pitcher on this staff after she had to sit behind Jess the year before, where some people, when your conference pitcher of the year, would have said, all right, I'm going to go to another place where they're going to go and make me the number one starter of P4,
Yeah.
which she could have done. So, like, I think that there's a special thing here. It really speaks to your staff and the program and the camaraderie and everything, that in a world where almost every team is seeing high rates of transfers for different reasons, it's not happening here at that level.
Yeah, it's not. And I go back to the values that Ricky Woodard has really established here, right? She's one of the realest people you're ever going to meet. So what you see is what you're going to get, right? She does a great job of recruiting what we do, recruiting good people, right? And people who understand that, like this, like if you come to Tech State softball, you're going to be a part of a big picture. And it's going to be so worth it. And it's going to be difficult and it's going to have its challenges. But if this is the experience you want, then this is the place for you. And San Marcos also is just like a beautiful place to be. But I think whenever like a program is so rooted in success, because that's the other thing, is you're going to grow as a person, right? You're going to find family. You're going to find out who you are, but you're going to win a lot of ball games because we're high level coaches. And I think like when you have both of those things of I'm taken care of as a person and I'm also highly competitive and I'm surrounded by authentic people who really care about me and show up for me every day, that makes that hard to leave, no matter what the situation is. So I really do think all of those elements really play to why people just have stayed, even if they're not getting as much playing time or if, things maybe seem greener on the other side.
Absolutely. And two questions before I jump into your story on players in the roster that we've talked to. On Mattie's side, first thing I'd just be curious about is how do you, from your eyes, I never had to actually ask Jess about this because the conversation we got too deep in other places, but how do you think that she was able to serve as a mentor for Mattie as she prepared
Yeah,
in her last year?
I am so glad that those two got to share a year together. I think that the biggest thing, was one, Jess showing her, how to be relentless, right? How to be fearless in that pursuit. I'm a huge Mattie Azua fan. I just think sometimes she forgets that she's the business, right? Like as a pitcher, you have to have a little bit of that. Like, hey, I got the stuff. Like I'm it in the circle. Like if you don't have some of that, you're probably going to struggle. And I think Mattie sometimes tends to downplay that a little bit. And she just kind of wants to keep her head down and go, which is very good. And it's good to be humble and those kinds of things. But I think Jess is really like, no, like you have the stuff, sister, go believe in it and go do that. And I think Mattie, seeing Jess do that, and also seeing how Jess worked in bullpens, because Jess took bullpens very seriously, right? Very intentful. I didn't take a rep off. Like a miss in the bullpen translates to a miss on the field, and you're not going to beat me on the field, so you're not going to beat me in the bullpen. So I really do think Jess was able to teach Mattie how to do it and how to do it well at this level, but also seeing somebody give themselves permission to be like, the boss in the circle, to be, that bad chick out there in the circle. It gives other female athletes empowerment to be like, no, like I'm going to play that way. And I'm going to feel empowered in my skin and empowered in my skill set to do that. And I think that she's walking around a little more, confidence these days because she saw someone do it before her, right? Who had all the intention, all the skill, and also the embodiment of, no, I'm Jessica Mullins and you're going to have to beat me. And I can beat you with a ball. I can beat you with a softball. I can beat you with a tangerine. You can put a rock in my hand and I'm going to strike you out. Like, you don't scare me. So I just think like giving the permission to feel that way. Like she did it. I'm going to do it. And I'm really enjoying playing this way because it's competitive and I trust in my stuff. So I'm so glad she got to experience that for sure.
And those moments really start in a few days from now and play Appalachian State. It's different when you play a conference game than it is.
It is different. Like it gets real, So we play other people in the preseason and it's competitive and it's, fun and we still go at it the same way. But I think these kids feel like, we have something to protect. And we have something special to protect outside of, winning at home, winning the Sun Belt Conference tournament, protecting what the seniors did last year. I think has been a really big thing with this group with, you talk about Sierra Turian, Carmen Bass, how much, the regard these seniors have. Well, Carmen's not a senior, but like Sierra and these people, like how much regard they have for what the seniors did last year. And I just feel like a sense of urgency to want to protect that, and everyone's on board with that, in my opinion. So Sunbelt play is a little bit different because we know that, when Texas State plays somebody, like it's, we're gonna go do what the Pass have done.
Yeah, and speaking of Sierra, that's my other person I wanted to just ask about briefly was it does sound like from every player that her injury last season was a major turning point
Hmm.
in terms of everyone really did want to play for her.
Yeah,
How has she been this year, just having her as a leader with so many new people?
I think it's been. I am a huge Sierra fan. She's one of the toughest, most all-out kids you can ask for. I think as a coach, you can't ask for more than when a kid is going to lay out and give her body for the sake of the game, right? Like it's just unbelievable. She's going to be missed. I mean, we're not even done with the season, but like what she brings to the table, I feel like, not to dive too deeply into the culture of female athletes in sports, but I just think in a world where people want to keep female athletes small, I think in a culture where it's like, I feel like some of them say, well, it's not, young people, it's not cool to be all in, right? Like it's not cool to be bought in. It's not that deep, right? I just play softball and I go home. It's Sierra Turhan cares very deeply about what we do. And she goes all out in practice and she goes all out in reps and she goes all out in the weight room. And I think to have somebody embody that every day for 4 years speaks this, like you can't replace that. Like that's irreplaceable. And you don't find that often, like I could go to Sierra right now and be like, hey, I need you to rob this home run. Or you could like, this ball can't touch the ground in this game. I know it may be like a 10-10 ball game and the offense has been great, but I'm sorry, but a ball can't leave the yard again. And she's going to go and she's going to give everything she has and risk hurting herself again to do that. And that's just irreplaceable. She's selfless in that way to where I'm going to be the best competitor for this game. And yeah, there's just no replacing a kid like that for sure.
Yeah, you can tell mine got to sit down with her that she is a special person. And you need those type of people in your locker room and your dugout to have winning teams, even if they're not. When you have a person like that, even when they're not on the field, they're still able to make an impact. I think everyone would say that that championship isn't one without her, even though she was just doing it from.
Yeah. And I think something else that makes her really special is she's not gonna shy away from the big thing. Prior to winning the conference tournament, we did a lot of, what are our goals for the season, right? You guys are seniors. What are we gonna go do? And a lot of it was just we're gonna take it one game at a time, and we're gonna do the little things right, and we're gonna, keep it one pitch at a time, play one team at a time, and win every moment that we can. Which is a very mature and senior thing to say because those things do lead up to a tournament championship. And Sierra is always just like, no, we're gonna win it all. We're gonna win it all, guys. Like we're gonna win it all, and that's my goal. Is we're gonna do that. And they did. And I think like she's the embodiment of that. Like she's tough and she's like, you're not going to take this away from me. Like I'm going to go take what's mine. Yes, we're going to win all the little stuff and do all that cool stuff, but we're going to win it. And it just speaks to the kind of person she is to have somebody that's just, no, we're not scared. We're going to go do that. And that just be the end of the story,
Something anyone can apply in anything that they're doing. Like if you're listening to the show, playing softball.
Yeah.
Anybody in any team has a chance to be that person.
Of what they're capable of. And I firmly believe that too. I think not to say that she needed hardship because no one really needs hardship, I guess. But if anything, I feel like it taught her like, yeah, you are like, this is who you are because she killed rehab. She killed coming back. Like she was like on it. As a coach, when kids obviously get injured, it's like, you never know how they're going to respond to it, right? If it's going to be, I'm not bigger than this and I don't want to put my body through this. And I think I'm just going to hang it up. It's just a very respectable, position to take, but she was on it and she was not going to let this hold her back. I never saw her take a day where it was like, oh, my knee's bothering me. I can't do rehab as tough. Or, I remember in the beginning, she even fought her athletic trainer, like, I'm not going to wear my brace. Like, I'm going to go, I'm going to be strong and I'm going to do that. So if anything, I just think it really affirmed to her, like, no, this is who I am. There's really no obstacle that's bigger than me that I can't beat. You're not going to beat me, And how do you beat somebody who refuses to be beaten? You just don't,
You don't. And then those are the kind of skills that when you look into life 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years in the future for her, it doesn't matter what she's doing. These are going to be skills that are going to make her a beneficial presence to a lot of other people in any role she takes in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm excited to watch that all unfold. Going back to the beginning of your journey, where was the first time, how'd you find yourself touching softball to a point? Like, I remember when I went to my first softball game. And I could see instantly that the energy of this sport is contagious.
Yeah.
And I could see why anyone would want to be around it every day. But where was your first moment kind of getting a glimpse of the sport, and what made you want to dedicate your life to it?
So this goes way, way back. I consider myself to be part of like a baseball, softball family, but mostly softball. My grandpa, my dad's dad, was a really great player back in the day. He was drafted by the Dodgers, didn't go to raise a family because he found out my grandma was pregnant. My grandma played softball back when it was like a slingshot back home. So they played and then had children, right? And my dad has mostly older sisters, so they all played softball. And then their children, their girls played softball, and all the boys played baseball too, but it was like 7 girls playing softball to like 3 boys playing baseball. So we just grew up around the sport. And I had an older cousin who was a pitcher, and I grew up watching all of her games, all that kind of stuff. She went on to play at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And I was around it, and it never really struck me. And then I went to one of her games. They were playing Baylor, right? And this was when Whitney Cannon was at Baylor. And if anyone knows softball, knows that Whitney Cannon was like just an absolute left-handed phenom at Baylor at the time, right? Like through gas, like I was just blown away at like her prowess, right? So I'm maybe like 9 years old watching this game, and it was good. It was a good game. I think Baylor ended up winning 2-0, but it was my cousin starting against Whitney Canyon, and it was like they were like throwing punches and going back and forth, and it was like a really good pitching game. And I could feel like my heart like, why do I care if she strikes out or not? Or why did that strikeout just fire me up, right? And I'm like, okay, like this is more than just casual viewership, right? I don't feel this way because it's just my cousin playing. There's something real about this that I just, like, it gives me goosebumps to think about, right? I'm like, no, this felt very real. And then a year later, right, my little sister starts playing softball. And my dad is coaching her, and I'm helping him coach. And I think just being around my little sister's journey, right? She wanted to pitch. I would go to pitching lessons with her. And as soon as like I left that Whitney Canyon game, that A&M Corpus Christi game, and went home and started throwing like a ball to a wall, right? So I'm like, I'm going to teach myself how to do that because that looks like a lot of fun. So I started to teach myself, and then I started to teach my sister, and then she would go to pitching lessons, and I would go with her to like kind of learn. So very quickly, it happened overnight. I feel like I was absorbed, and then I just remember the rest of that softball season. I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch softball on TV when I could, and then it just snowballed from there, and you couldn't take me away from it. I still like I'm a huge softball junkie. Like during that time, like I watched if there was something on YouTube, TV, like if there was a pitcher, I really probably fell in love with pitching first, and then fell in love with softball. But it absorbed me into it, and I didn't know why. Because I'm like, at the time I didn't know men's fast pitch existed. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this like big surmountable love that I have in my chest for this sport, right? Like I didn't consider coaching because I'm like, I don't have, like I was like a JV player on baseball, right? Like I wasn't a good player. I know how to pitch. I just love the sport so badly. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. So, I'm at a lesson with my sister, and the girl giving the lesson to my sister, I think I was a senior in high school already. Giving the lesson to my sister was the spouse to the head coach at A&M Corpus Christi softball. And she was like, well, you pitch, right? I'm like, yeah, I pitch. Like it's, I don't know how good I am. I kind of it's fun and I love it. And she's like, you're going to Texas State? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, you should see if they need any like student managers. Like coaches love people that can throw BP, catch bullpens, help out, especially if you're willing to do it for free. Like they will not turn down free help at a mid-major, like, and especially good help. Like you should look into that if you want to stay around the sport. And I thought about it for a while, and then we actually went to an Islander game that played Texas State, and I saw that Cat Osterman was an assistant coach, and I was like, okay, no, like I need to try to be a part of this. Like, how cool would it be to like work and learn for Cat Osterman? So I waited because I was honestly shy. I was worried about her saying no. And a week before the semester started, which is crazy because now as a coach, I'm like, if you email me a week before the semester started, like I've already planned out the whole fall, and to pick up and add somebody new is kind of just like a lot of work and like. I don't know. So I'm just grateful. So I emailed Coach Woodard, and Coach Brood, who I actually work with now, is the one who corresponded back to me and said, you can meet us here. We'd love to chit chat with you about maybe, being, we only have a volunteer position available. You can come out to some practices, catch bullpens. That's what I did on my first day, was catch bullpens, help set up practice. We'll see how we can use you. And then I just haven't looked back ever since. They really put me under their wing and taught me everything about how to win at this level, how to recruit at this level, and how to pitch at this level, right? Her and I begged her and she would do it. I'm so grateful for this time with her. But I'd be like, I want to go throw a bullpen, and for me to learn, like I want you to coach me like you would coach an athlete. So I can see what it's like so that when I'm a coach one day, because at the time I probably thought I was going to coach in high school, right? I'm like, so when I'm coaching someday, you can, I can just see how to do that, right? Or what you would say. So we would do that, and I found myself learning really quickly and, getting really good at the things that I was learning. And then my senior year, I told Coach Woodard, like, hey, I really think I can do this. Do you think I can do this? And she's like, there's no doubt in my mind that you can coach at this. Just depending on what you want to do, right? So I GA'd for a year at Arizona State, and then this pitching coach job opened up, and I came back 3 years ago, and I've been here ever since. So that's kind of how I got started in softball. I feel like I was kind of born into it. Like there was no other path I was going to take given my bloodline.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I think it's a really cool example, not just for softball, but I think that a lot of people who want to coach miss the point that you really got to learn to do something yourself to become a elite coach at it to a degree. And it's pretty cool that you spent your time with Kat and said, hey, like while you're here, can I take bullpens? Can I go make sure I'm doing this? Can I be hands-on? I see so many coaches in any sport. I feel like it'll surprise me. It's one of the things that surprises me the most in sports is when you see coaches, you're like, I don't feel like that person's ever really put themselves in the shoes of the players. And I feel like it just gives you, there's ways to be successful coaches without doing that. Yeah. But I think it brings your coaching to another level when you go and take the time to really learn what it takes to do what they're doing.
Absolutely. Especially me, because I taught myself how to throw, and I didn't do a bad job, but I was nowhere near, I wasn't a good pitcher by any means, and so I knew that if I wanted to be a good coach and I couldn't do it myself, or I couldn't teach myself the things I was asking others to do, that wasn't going to be the path for me. And so I knew that asking Kat or learning from Kat and Paige McDuffie, who was here after Kat and Coach Woodard, please teach me. Because if I can't teach myself how to do it, then when I'm asking an athlete to do it, I'm going to struggle. Or I'm not going to know how to bridge the gaps for them because I didn't live that experience. I didn't have to go through that learning experience, right? Because players who become coaches had to learn, right? And I think that that just really mattered to me. I wanted to be able to actually be able to teach and no, I know that this adjustment I'm telling you is going to work because I had to do it. And I saw it. And these are the adjustments I made. And that's really paid dividends to how I've been able to help and develop these people.
And it does exactly, because it doesn't mean that you had to be the best at it, but just doing it can help you understand the technicalities of how can Jess pitch better, how can Mattie pitch better. Those are things that you can see things in their game a little bit easier because that muscle memory of this is what it felt like when I was going through those sessions with Kat. And I couldn't throw this ball the way I wanted to, or this wasn't getting located. There's a lot of things that you could only know from having done it.
From having done it, absolutely. And again, I'm very grateful to have done it under very elite people because now that's the standard. Another part of Kat's journey that was really developmental for me and how I coached them was seeing her come back to the Olympics because I got to catch 70% of her bullpens because she was still working here. And so she wasn't in good physical shape, right? But she started off with just fastballs and seeing her develop, just seeing that journey again, I'm like, it made me a better coach, right? Because she coached herself through that and I was just kind of catching and along for the ride. But the intention, the development, the tools that she gave herself to get back into game ready shape, I got to see that done at an Olympic level. And so now I'm able to feel like I give gold medal level status of training to people. And maybe it's difficult because that's my standard, now, but it's made me just such a better coach for others, and I'm so grateful for it.
I have to imagine that was just absurdly inspirational to see someone who wasn't, like you said, in Olympic shape, work their way all the way back and see that even if you do take a detour for a second, that when you make a decision, I want to get back to that point. If you take all the right steps, you can do it.
Yes, and I remember going through the process with her, and her Kat is one of the most determined people I've ever met, but also just very disciplined and trusting of the process because she threw fastballs for maybe 3 weeks. And I'm like, okay, but what about your filthy drop ball and your curveball? You're starting to worry me. Hey, you're going to need those things. And she was just like, I got to get my body right. I got to get my timing right. I got to get all things right. And those things will come. And then she went to the drop ball and did just the down pitch for like 2 months and then added her pieces back. And before we knew it, she was, killing the game touring Team USA. So I just validated a lot of things that I felt as a coach. And now I'm like, no, there is a process and you're just going to have to trust what we're doing here. Yeah.
And what do you think maybe the biggest lesson from her specifically that you've kind of taken on? It could be pitching technically, or it could just be off the field. But what do you think getting to be around greatness like that?
Honestly, discipline. Like, if you want it, you're going to do it every day. And you don't want it, then sorry. And I think that, being able to handle these athletes now, being able to talk the talk and walk the walk. There was not a day, like if she said, I'm going to go run 400 meters today and then throw a bullpen, and it's going to be a good bullpen, she was going to do that. She didn't run 400 meters and then go to the bullpen and say, oh, my legs are tired, or I'm going to struggle today. It was, no, I'm going to know this. Like you weren't going to beat her in any dimension, right? We had a joke because there was like an ice cream shop in San Marcos that we loved. And if she felt like she couldn't have ice cream later, she wasn't going to do it. She's like, no, it's not on my plan today. I'm not going to do that, but we can go get a sandwich or just like the most disciplined person I've ever met. And again, of course, she's an Olympian.
Yes.
And so now I'm like, these people who have these athletes we coach that have dreams, I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get there without discipline. And had I not seen her process to that, I may have believed that you can kind of be half in and half out and accomplish it. Like, hey, you can show up and do your job here, and when you go home, take the hat off and be yourself and just relax a little. Because there is no taking off the hat with Cat Osterman. The hat does not come off, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. And that's really the biggest thing I've learned, is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you want to be a gold medal, Olympian, you're going to have to be a gold medal person because the standards don't change.
And you're a gold medal person at every step of your life.
At every step.
Whether that's nutrition, whether that's sleep, whether that's communication with others and the way you handle your friendships and your family.
Absolutely.
It was everything. And you got, by kind of getting to go through life with her, you got to see what that looked like every time of the day.
Every time of the day. And even as a coach, yeah, it was amazing. It was just seeing her live that, because she lives that every single day.
And now you get to pass that on to everybody at Texas State.
Yeah, now I get to pass that on. And I'm sure some days you're just like, oh my God, Coach Josh. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. But how you do one thing is how you do everything. And one day you're going to realize that was a huge, important lesson to learn, because life don't get any easier. And now Kat's a mom. And I love seeing her win at being a mom, being an amazing mom as well, because it's the same way. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So,
and she's an important part of continuing to move softball forward in this new generation.
Mm-hmm. Athletes Unlimited, everything else that she's taken on to. So it's just, I think people are always like, people are so lucky, success finds people, or people just, I'm like, no, she made that. People make that. Jessica Mullins, Sarah Vanford, Ricky Worded, people make that. There's a thing that they live by every single day. It doesn't just happen. Success isn't luck. Success is, no, I made that happen, for sure.
Yeah, and there's a world out there. There's a timeline somewhere where Jess or Sarah finds themselves playing for at some point. It's possible.
I would love that. I mean, I absolutely would love that. And as a fan of the sport, absolutely.
Neither of us have any control, but But if that happened, that would be a cool storyline that is possible. Obviously, spent 1 year away from the program here.
Who?
You spent 1 year away from Texas State.
I did. When I graduated here from my undergrad, I went to Arizona State and spent 1 year there as a graduate assistant. And then that's when the whole staff also moved to A&M after that year. So the whole staff left and went to A&M. And it just so happened that the pitching coach job was open at Texas State. So I just came back.
Made sense. But what do you think? What did you learn in that year away at Arizona State? You did win a Pac-12 championship, so it's pretty cool. You're 1-0 and winning conference titles in your time away here. But what do you think that you learned in the year away that you got to bring back?
I think professionally, that staff at A&M, Trisha Ford, I feel like is the same way. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I just found myself surrounded by these people. Maybe it's not coincidence, because I sought after that kind of, type of coaching. But just championship level coaching. And I think about what Trisha Ford was able to do at Arizona State, and kind of, it's a historic program, but they hadn't won the Pac-12, right, since the coaching changes and stuff. And for her to build that team into a super regional team, win the Pac-12, beat UCLA, beat these people who are crazy good. I just, as a professional, like I just saw what it takes to win at an extremely high level and what it takes to, manage a team and do that at an extremely high level. And I think that as a profession, like as a coach, like that's the biggest takeaways. I saw the ins and outs, right? How she manages her bullpen. Because I thought it was really cool to see a head coach who's a pitching coach as well, because that's not as common. How she manages her pitchers, how she interacts with the players, right? How, like how in are they with her? I'm like, is she, like I learned how people at a high level do it. And it wasn't too different than how it's done at Texas State, which is really like felt good for me to know. Was like, okay, like I don't have to change the kind of person I am if I go from a mid-major to a power four or power five at the time. Um, but again, just another instance of no, like it's reaffirming that if how you do one thing and do everything is how you win at a mid-major, it's also how you win at a power five. You know, that's how you win anything. Personally, I learned a lot about, perseverance and endurance and kind of having to love where your feet are because I am a Texas guy through and through. And so when I went to Arizona and there were no, sweet tea, there was no breakfast tacos, there was it was difficult. But again, I think I learned resiliency and I learned how to be comfortable being uncomfortable and how to let yourself grow. Because for the first 2 months, it was like, this isn't Texas State. Like, this isn't back home. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And it had nothing to do with the people. It just had everything to do with my environment. So, like, I think putting myself into that growth mindset of this is supposed to teach me something. This isn't where I'm going to end up in life, but this is supposed to teach me something. What am I supposed to learn in this moment personally? I think also has made me a better coach to these athletes. Because as a student athlete, you're going to face lots of conflict. You're going to face lots of trials and tribulations, in the classroom, personal life, the whole enchilada, right? It gets really difficult. So I think being able to speak from experience of like, honestly, I was invisible and it had nothing to do with my environment. It had everything to do with my mindset helps me coach them better. So again, professionally, I learned that, how you do one thing is how you do everything there. And successful people all kind of do the same things. And the standard is the standard. And then personally, just your mindset is everything and how you approach it. And happiness kind of depends on how you want to see it.
Did it help you understand that Texas was a place that you wanted to be long-term too by spending the year away? Just from an environment perspective, when you came back, more than just the softball side of things and being a part of the staff that I know you love to be a part of, was it also understand that sometimes like a place is home and to be away for a year kind of gives you that affirmation that this is where I want to stay?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad, I'm so glad I did because I had chances and opportunity to stay in BGA somewhere in Texas. It was really my parents back home who were like, while you have the chance to and like a means to, you need to go somewhere else so that later on in life you don't think, oh, what if I had, or that kind of thing. And absolutely, it reaffirmed that I love San Marcos and it reaffirmed that I want to be in Texas. Like I, want to be at Texas State, obviously, as long as I can be, right? But if a situation arises where I'm not, I want to be in Texas and I want to do that. And I think as a young person, the world kind of pushes like, go see and go do. And I'm glad I went and did at a young age because I don't want to be this age going to Arizona for a job and figuring out that I don't like it. So it was just that really measuring tool of my grass is green because I want to be here. My grass is green because I'm taking care of it, not because of all like the flashier stuff.
And being in a place that feels like home is something that's priceless.
Oh yeah, it's priceless. And I get to come to work every day and feel like I'm a part of something that's really meaningful and pouring into this program every day. Because again, I talk about how, Ricky Woodard and the program poured into me. Like I, kind of consider myself to be like, I was no one to college softball, right? Like I didn't play, I didn't do any of those kinds of things, but they still took me in open arms and said, okay, you have a seat at this community if you want it, but you're going to have to go about it this way. And if you go about it this way, we'll pour into you and we'll help you do that. And I just will never have enough regard and gratitude for that. So I think now coming into work every day and seeing, the kids wear the Texas State stuff and all that stuff, I'm like, no, this means so much more than just softball. And I'm going to pour into my work every day because it poured into me. And that's just not a feeling I'm going to get anywhere else. So it's just so special being able to work here.
It's an amazing thing. If you were to look back on this journey, what do you think that as a coach, the hardest moment you faced and how'd you get through it?
Hardest moment I faced. I'm going to say, and I don't want, this is going to sound like probably like an exaggerated example, but my whole first year coaching was extremely difficult for me. I was putting lots of expectations on myself because then now I feel like I am inheriting like Mount Olympus, right? I'm like, I'm supposed to be the pitching coach after Cat Osterman and Paige McDuffie, who are amazing pitching coaches who developed All-Americans and developed, conference pitcher of the year kind of style and were amazing pitchers in their own right, right? So I kind of carried that on my shoulder in a way that's like, okay, I'm going to match what they did in terms of work ethic, but I also put a lot of pressure on the results. Um, and I learned rather quickly that like, okay, like you're also not, you can't pitch for them, right? Like you can prepare them, you can do all the things, but like we would leave a game and if we gave up an earned run, I was like, that's on me. Like I either needed to call a different pitch. I would go to Coach Woodard and be like, would you have done this differently? Like, what did you do? Like, what did you think? And I wore every single earned run that year. Like every earned run felt like, no, I need to be better. And that made the job incredibly difficult to manage, right? Because you play 64 games, and if you give up, 100 earned runs, and still have a good ERA, but you give up 100, that's every time we give up an earned run or home run. I was like, that was on me. What did I do? How do I do that differently? And being 24, because I was 24 when I got this job, when things weren't going our way, it was the kind of like the thoughts of doubt trickling in of, well, yeah, like you're not supposed to be good at this job. You weren't a great player. All the sneaky suspicion things kind of like started creeping in, and it was hard to combat. Even though we still had a really good year that year, but that kind of pressure that I put on myself made that year extremely difficult. And I think when the year was over, I had a conversation with Coach Woodard, and I was like, I want you to genuinely, like, I need you to give me an evaluation, because the only way I feel like I'm going to silence whether I belong here or not is for you to give me that evaluation. And we had a really honest conversation, and she was like, like you pour into these athletes every single day. Did you feel like they were prepared? Did you do X, Y, and Z? Yes. Then you did your job as a coach. And that was like the biggest thing I probably learned was I can't play for them. I can have expectations and standards, but I can't wear everything, right? And all you can do is train them to the best of your capability, know that they're prepared, give them everything they feel they need to be successful, and then just let them play and let the game carry it out, right? Because as a coach, if you wear every single little loss, you're going to talk yourself out of not doing this. Because at the end of that year, I kind of was like, well, is this something I even want to do? Like, I spent the whole spring, like, kind of like not in a, like, I wasn't enjoying the game. It wasn't fun because I was wearing every single loss. And I didn't want to live in that headspace. I want to enjoy coaching. So I just finding the right way to navigate that, knowing when, hey, this is a growing moment as a coach. Maybe I should do this differently. And also, like, I prepared them for the moment. They failed. It's not the end of the world. We learn from it and we move on.
I think that's just such a valuable lesson, like that so many like people in any kind of coaching or like management or teaching profession, like you can't do the job for the people that you're helping.
You can't. And I thought me being mature was owning every single failure, right? Because I'm like, okay, the mature way to handle this is to say, oh, every failure is my fault. And what I learned was the best way to handle that was, I'm not going to dwell on this failure. What did I learn from this? And I'm going to move on. Kobe Bryant, I love Kobe Bryant. He has a quote somewhere that's like, there is no winning and losing. There's winning and learning. And that's, if you give yourself permission to think that way, you will never suffer, like I said, suffer like a day in your life in the sport realm. Because if you're constantly learning, you're not losing. You're a winner because you're getting something from that and moving on. So I think learning to not sit and dwell on the failure of the mistake or the failure of what I felt like was my mistake and just learning from it and moving on, it's made me a better coach. And again, now I can tell the athletes, like, you can't dwell on failure because I don't dwell on failure. I learn from it and I move on. It's a game of failure. It's going to happen. So definitely, for sure.
And no, for the pitcher, for example, you could give up 5 runs in 3 innings of this, on paper, terrible game, but you might have needed to do one thing really bad so you realize that, oh, I need to work on this thing. And that might actually be the thing that helps that person be lights out the rest of the season because they got to expose. Sometimes, like, it's actually almost better to do something more polarizing. So you get the chance to, speaking of lessons, like, you get the chance to realize, like, wow, I really need to work in that area. And it gives you the stuff that might actually be the tool that helps you as a coach say, man, like, your curveball just isn't working. Are we going to take that out of your arsenal? Are we going to work on refining the way you throw that? Are we going to try a different off-speed pitch? If someone just sits in mediocrity, it's harder to coach sometimes than maybe someone actually has a polarizing performance and you can go home and say, I now know what I got to coach you on, because you never it's hard. It's not an easy job.
It's not an easy job. Absolutely. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, because I think I wasn't approaching failure at the time of, okay, now what? Like, what am I going to do about it? It was, okay, I'm just wasn't a good coach today. So, I think going back on the previous question of like the Mattie Zua, Jessica Mullins, what they learned from each other, I think was that, right? If she had an outing, it's crazy because she would strike 3 people out and be like, my rise ball was 2 inches lower than it should have been. Like, what are we going to do about it? What's next? That's not going to cut it with, the next time they see it or that kind of thing. So I think seeing Jess do that as well. And then also, I think when you talk, I don't know if it came up, but I think if you asked Mattie Zua about facing adversity early, she'd say she'd grateful, because right now we're working on stuff that's going to make Mattie Zua really good for conference and move forward. But early in the year, we put her in some tough situations where she had to face some adversity, and she did fail a little bit, but we're better because of it. So the Mattie Zua that we get for the further months is better because she had adversity and a growth mindset in early February and mid-February, if that makes sense. So
And she's still so early in her journey.
absolutely.
Like you said, this is her first year being like that person. And then in addition to that, she's a conference preseason pitcher of the year, which is a lot of pressure to put on somebody.
Absolutely.
But then she's only a sophomore. So in reality, you're still really, most people would win that award as a junior or a senior. She's taken the pressure of that award as a sophomore. So she still needs those moments of refining her game.
Yeah. And I think now as a coach, like I think Eddie asked me 2 years ago, I wouldn't say this, but now as a coach, I'm like, I crave adversity and failure for myself and for my student athletes. Obviously not all the time, and obviously not in big moments, but it's like, no, we need that, because it's going to make you a better athlete and a better person and a better player. And how you handle this is going to tell you everything you need to know about yourself. So the more adversity and the more adversity and like manageable failure we can create and practice and in games, the better off we're going to be. And I think that's just like this shift in the mindset as well. And I think she's starting to get that, like, adversity is a good thing and I'm going to rise to the occasion. And I didn't even realize it, but maybe last week I was here and now I'm here because of how I met the situation.
As a coaching staff, you do such a service to this team by going to A&M and playing the types of teams that you played in that tournament, to play Tech and to play A&M, because that's a great measuring stick. I think for speaking of like a group of like a mid-major type program, when you head into the Sun Belt play, which is one of the better softball conferences in the country still, but to play an SEC team, to play a Big 12 team that a lot of familiar faces from last year, but Louisiana, but you play a Big 12 team that still has a lot of very high level talent. It gives you a great concept of where are we as a team right now versus where we want to be when we get to a regional at the end of the year. We're going to have to face these teams. And so it's good to know at that moment in February, March, this is the gap that we need to cover. So when we get to those games in May, we know how to play these types of teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I will those games are important, yes, for like the physical measuring stick of how do we need to pitch, how do we need to hit, how do we need to, field, how do we need to do those kinds of things. But I think more so as coaches is how are you going to show up and compete, right? Are you going to show up and say, oh, we're not supposed to win this game, so we're just going to play? Or is it going to be, we have nothing to lose and you're going to have to beat me because I'm coming for you, And I think those are the bigger kind of personal measuring sticks as coaches that we love to see, because it's, we don't have anything to lose, right? But if we go in there and say, hey, we're going to go in there and you're going to have to beat us, life happens. And then the game happens, right? Because realistically, it's catch, throw, hitting. Like, you can go in there with a 0-0 batting average and go 3 for 3. And then suddenly, it's the game went better or the game went towards someone that it shouldn't have, if that makes sense. So I just think if we carry that competitive nature into everything we do, like, that's every game we face in season, I think as coaches, that's kind of what we wanted to see out of them, is how are you going to compete, right? We're going to open up with Arkansas. What are you going to do about it, right? Mattie Zua, you're getting the start. How are you going to compete, right? Sold out crowd, like big people, like standard situations. How are you going to compete? And at the end of the day, that's just kind of, I think, what those matchups mean more for us is, are you going to go out there and roll over, or are you going to compete every day and say that you can't beat me unless I beat myself? Yeah.
And let's you as a coach, we talked about, get back to your job and see where are the areas that, let me help expose some of the areas where you can get better as a player. So when we head into the Sun Belt and we head into conference games, when you go 0-0 and these things start mattering and we're defending a championship, we give you the best we can to help you be the best version of yourself. And that's not just for Mattie, that's for every player on the team.
For every player on the team, absolutely. Again, like I said, they need that. I think as coaches, we crave a certain level of adversity and failure, right? Because as coaches, our job is to make you better. So, at practice, I think we try to incorporate failure, right? So that you can see that there is still such a high ceiling for you to get to and how we get there. But I feel like it doesn't resonate until you're in a game situation and it's like, oh, I threw the ball to the wrong base. And they took 2 bases. I see why we work on it in practice now. Or, oh, like I left my curveball thigh high and it got hit really hard against someone who shouldn't have hit it that hard. But I get it now. So yeah, those moments are absolutely priceless for them to see how we can make them better. And I also think it's good to keep the kids hungry chasing something, right? The second you think that you're the best at what you do, you kind of start to like get on your heels a little bit, when you reach your threshold. So it's a give and take of you got this, but there's still room to go. You can do this right now. You can execute this right now. But we have some things to work on, right? And that's just like the never-ending life of an athlete. And I go back to that Kobe Bryant quote of if you're not winning, you're not losing, you're learning, right? It's winning and learning, and just constantly keeping that cycle.
And kind of last thing, but totally opposite of the question I asked, what do you think the most exciting moment was of this journey so far? The conference championship could have been that moment, but you never know.
For me personally?
Yes.
Winning the conference championship at home, very exciting. My parents were in the stands. That was a phenomenal feeling. For me personally, I think was my first year. My first big Power 5 games were Alabama and Texas in the same 24-hour span. And I remember pulling in Jess to watch film with me back home when we were making plans. We were talking through hitters with the pitchers and stuff. And I put out the plan and I said, Jess, because I make pitching coaching about we, because we share one brain, right? It's not me telling you what to do. It's what are we going to do to beat these people, right? Like you have as much input into this game as I do. We are a team. If we follow this plan that we watch and put together and we can execute these things, we're going to put ourselves in a position to where we're going to keep this offense in check and our offense has a chance to score. And exactly what we needed to do on our plan, we went out and did. And I think as a coach, that was just the most aha, crazy full circle moment thing. Because it's like, no, we talked about this and we did it. Like the Alabama game was textbook. She did X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z happened, right? And the same thing against Texas. So I think to have that moment with an athlete of no, we did that together. I think as a coach now, I look back and I'm like, that's just I'm glad that happened, but also seldom does it ever happen that way. Seldom does a plan go as right? Where we didn't have to go to plan B or plan C or whatever. It was plan A the whole time and it worked. And so those are huge wins in my career and moments with Jessica Mullins that I'll never forget because it really was just if we do this, this, and this, it's going to happen. And it happened. So that was a really, really, really exciting moment for me.
Against 2 of the best teams in the country.
Against 2 of the best teams in the country. And again, we got to do it in Texas, so our own people were there. And as a young coach, it was really, solidifying to me that no, I belong here and this is what I want to do. And I can do this with, this crowd and this team. So that was a really exciting moment for me.
It's special to have those experiences. And now you get to look forward with 2 extraordinarily special and then a whole special staff. But, you get to look forward to those moments with them as they continue their growth in their career. So it's an exciting thing.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to all the cool little special memories I get to make with these people.
It's been such a pleasure having you on and excited to keep
covering
this.
Thank you for having me.